Last Saturday, we had just opened our discussion of the subject of Maya. What does Maya mean? Does it really mean illusion and only illusion? Or is there anything more to it? Today, let's try to get a proper understanding of the concept of Maya. According to Vedanta, the absolute reality, Brahman is one and without a second. And it is of the nature of Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, and bliss. Brahman is the only reality, the only real substance. All other material objects that we are able to perceive through our body, senses, and the mind, all of them are unreal and unsubstantial. This is what Vedanta says. They are products of ignorance that is called Maya. But how is it that we mistake the material universe and its objects to be real? How have unsubstantial names and forms come into existence? If the ultimate reality is one and only one, then why do we see this relative world with all its multiplicity? What is the relationship between the one and the many, between the absolute and the relative? These are the most puzzling questions of philosophy. The most difficult of all philosophical problems is that of the relationship between the finite and the infinite. The question of how this finite world came into being. In our last class, we had a brief introduction to the three main answers that thinkers have given to these questions. Some believe that the universe is the creation of an external power called God. That makes God and the universe two distinct entities, separate from one another. And this external power called God has created the universe. How? Just as a piece of furniture is created by a carpenter, or a pot is fashioned by a potter. If we believe this, then we must admit that God, the infinite, is no longer infinite. Because there are two realities. Some others believe that God or the power itself has become the universe. So the cause of the universe doesn't lie outside it. But then the difficulty here is, if God transforms himself into the visible universe, then he is himself subject to transformation, to change. Then he can't be regarded as the absolute reality, because the absolute reality has to be changeless. Moreover, a God who creates the world limits himself by the very act of creation, which means after the creation, God is no longer infinite. In addition to that, the question of why God should create at all if he is perfect, that remains unanswered. Then, according to some extreme Advaitins, like Gaudapadacharya, according to extreme Advaitins, there has never been any creation at all. Brahman alone exists, and all that is perceived is Brahman. If you say you see the world of multiplicity, sorry, but you are a victim of illusion. Because when the truth is known, duality does not exist. If names and forms really existed, then you should be able to connect them by some kind of relationship. Say, cause and effect, or substance and quality. Some kind of relationship should be there between them. You are all now studying Mandukya Upanishad. There you see how Gaudapada has effectively disproved all such relationships and conclusively shown that no real creation ever took place. Everything that exists is actually, in reality, the non-dual Brahman. This universe of diversity, it has no existence because it is not perceived when Brahmajnana, knowledge of reality, is attained. According to Shankaracharya, however, the universe of names and forms cannot be denied as facts of everyday experience. These are things we experience day in and day out. So Shankaracharya says, for such people, names and forms cannot be denied. For those that are under the spell of ignorance. But he too makes it very clear that from the standpoint of Brahman, the world of names and forms is totally non-existent. The mirage is a fact for one who is under the illusion in the desert. Though there is not even a trace of moisture in the sands. I may be seeing only a piece of harmless rope in semi-darkness, but I firmly believe that it is a snake and nothing else. The snake is real to me. The dream experiences are real to a dreamer. They only become unreal when the dreamer wakes up. So, in the same way, names and forms are real as long as one is under the spell of illusion, so long as one is still dreaming. And they will remain real until one attains true knowledge. But we must understand that there is no fundamental difference between the views of Gaudapada and Shankaracharya. Gaudapada is speaking from the standpoint of Brahman, and so he holds the world to be non-existent. Whereas Shankaracharya deals with the universe from the standpoint of Maya, where it is seen to be real. But the beauty of Shankaracharya's philosophy is in its practicality, in its relevance to us. It is Shankaracharya who shows the way to the realization of Brahman and its result, that is moksha. According to Shankaracharya, we can't ignore the universe as long as we see it, nor can we deny our relationships with our fellow human beings. We can't do that. Or our relation to the various things of the world, as long as they appear to be real. And surely they are real to us if we are conscious of the reality of our own individual egos. We saw that last week. So, as long as I see multiplicity, I must work, I must pray, I must worship, reap the results of my karma, and experience happiness and unhappiness. In my present state, I can't disregard the difference between good and evil, dharma and adharma. I will be rewarded for being good and following dharma. And I will also be punished for the opposite. Shankaracharya even goes to the extent of saying that the validity of the scriptures, the usefulness of spiritual disciplines, all the do's and don'ts of ethics and morality, everything is based on the recognition of this fact, the recognition of the reality of this phenomenal world. Otherwise, nothing is of any use. Only from the standpoint of Brahman, they are utterly meaningless. That is what it means. It reminds me of an incident in Sri Ramakrishna's life. One day he was talking to one of his young boy disciples who was deeply devoted to Vedanta. The boy's name was Harinath, and he later became the famous Swami Turiyananda. Sri Ramakrishna said, hearing, reflecting, meditating. First hearing, you hear that Brahman is real, the universe is unreal. Then reflecting on what you have heard. By reason and discrimination, you get the idea deeply, correctly imprinted in your mind. That is to say, you become convinced of what you have heard. And after that, meditation. You apply your mind to Brahman, the absolute reality. This is what Shravana, Manana and Nididhyasana means. But here, Sri Ramakrishna says, how do you apply your mind to Brahman? By renouncing the universe, which is unreal. Otherwise, what is the use if you hear and understand the teachings of Vedanta, but do nothing to give up what is unreal? It is like the knowledge of worldly people, Sri Ramakrishna says, tells Harinath. You need conviction, you need renunciation. Only then you will succeed. Otherwise, you may say there is no thorn, there is no pricking, but the moment you touch the thorn, you feel the prick and you cry out in pain. You merely say this universe doesn't exist, it is all unreal, Brahman alone exists, and so on. But as soon as you come in touch with the sense objects of the world, you take them, in spite of yourself, you will take them to be real and you get entangled. Then Sri Ramakrishna tells Harinath something from his own life. He says, once a sadhu came to live at the Panchavati. You know Panchavati, where Sri Ramakrishna practiced all his sadhanas. A sadhu came to live there, and he used to speak to people incessantly on Vedanta. Then one day I heard he was having an illicit affair with a woman. I went and found him sitting there, and I said to him, "You talk so much about Vedanta, now what is this?" But the sadhu replied, "So what? I can make it clear to you that I have done nothing wrong." The sadhu is telling Sri Ramakrishna, "I can make it clear to you that I have done nothing wrong." When it is a fact that the world is unreal in the past, present, and future, will my action alone be real? That is also unreal. Then Sri Ramakrishna says to Harinath, I was disgusted when I heard this. And I said, I spit on your Vedantic knowledge. I spit on your Vedantic knowledge. This is the kind of knowledge which worldly people have of Vedanta. Sri Ramakrishna says that kind of knowledge is no knowledge. If the sadhu had really believed the world was unreal, he wouldn't have had that affair in the first place. So, what Sri Ramakrishna left unsaid was that if the sadhu's affections for the woman were real, then the rules of conduct that are in place in the world are also real. Anyhow, let's return to the main question. How can the absolute have become or have produced the relative? How can Atman, which is nothing but Brahman, how can Atman identify itself with the ego and everything that is related to it? These are all moot questions that are bound to remain open to discussion, to debate forever. They can never be satisfactorily answered. We already saw how impossible it is to determine the precise relationship between the absolute Brahman and the relative universe. Because there can't be any relationship between reality and appearance. Something that exists cannot be related to something doesn't really exist. But we do see the universe. And this Shankaracharya calls Maya. Maya cannot be known. Even if it is experienced, it can't be explained. In order to determine the relationship of the absolute to the visible universe, the finite mind, our finite mind, would have to know the infinite absolute. But when such an infinite absolute is known, the universe and the finite mind both cease to exist. This is perfectly understandable. That is why Shankaracharya does not offer any explanation of creation. Last week we heard about three theories of creation: Arambhavada, Parinamavada and Vivartavada. The theory of origination, the theory of actual transformation, and the theory of apparent transformation. According to the first theory, the theory of origination, the universe did not exist before it was created. The effect is non-existent before it is produced. According to the second, the theory of actual transformation, the cause manifests itself as the effect. That means the effect, before it is produced, exists as the cause. And the third theory, that of apparent transformation, that is how Advaita Vedanta describes the creation. Strictly speaking, it's not a theory of creation. It only speaks of the universe as Maya, the illusory superimposition of names and forms upon Brahman. You know the Vedanta story of a lion cub born in a flock of sheep. It bleated, ate grass, and thought itself to be a sheep in all respects. One day a lion from the forest falls upon it and drags it to the water. There the cub is shown its reflection and a piece of meat is pressed into its mouth. Then suddenly the wheel drops and the sheep lion discovers itself to be a real lion. This is a classic case of illusory superimposition. Through the power of Maya, ignorance. Names and forms are attributed or superimposed. Attributed heißt zugeschrieben. Superimposed heißt überlagert. So names and forms are superimposed or attributed on Brahman, and then the relative universe appears to come into existence. When that apparent diversity is negated, finite, then Brahman, which is in reality pure consciousness without name and form, that Brahman stands revealed again. The point is, the true nature of Brahman is not in the least affected by the superimposition of illusory ideas. Nothing has happened to Brahman. So, in fact, there is no relationship between the one and the many. There can be a relationship only between two existing entities. The one and the many don't exist in the same sense. When I see the one, I don't see the many. When I see the non-dual Brahman, I don't see this universe. But when I see this universe of names and forms and establish a relationship, any kind of relationship, between what I see and Brahman, Advaita Vedanta calls that idea of relationship Maya. The mirage is Maya, and its relationship with the desert is also Maya. It is due to Maya that I see a snake in place of a rope, water in the desert, and multiplicity in the place of non-duality. Vedanta speaks of two levels of experience. One is the level of duality or multiplicity, which we know in our everyday life through our senses. That is one level. The other is the level of unity or non-duality, which is known directly, immediately, intuitively. That is not through the senses or our reasoning. I repeat, Vedanta does admit the relative reality of the first level. On this level, it is a fact of experience that the one appears inexplicably as the many, the absolute as the relative, the infinite as the finite. This relativity is what Vedanta calls Maya. So, the doctrine of Maya recognizes the reality of multiplicity from where? From this relative standpoint. It simply states that the relationship of this relative reality with the absolute can never be described, can never be known. It will always remain unknowable to the human mind. The doctrine of Maya doesn't explain how or why the absolute should appear as the relative. It only states a fact that is experienced. In the same sense as snake, mirage, and dream objects are Maya, the creation is also Maya. That is all. So, Maya is the word Vedanta often uses to describe the creation. When it says that the universe is Maya, it is only stating a fact that the non-dual Brahman inexplicably appears as another entity, as the universe of names and forms. But the how and why of this experienced fact cannot be explained because Brahman never actually became this world. For example, when I speak of a stone as a solid substance, I am only describing something that is a fact to me. But what is it to a physicist who is observing it under a microscope? To a physicist, the same stone is a mass of whirling particles or electrical charges. Somehow these intangible particles or charges appear to others as stone. What to us is the world of multiplicity, the same thing is to an illumined soul nothing but the non-dual Brahman. This phenomenon Vedanta would describe as Maya. Our little limited mind, which is itself a product of Maya, a product of time, space and causality. Such a mind can't understand Maya's true nature. Nevertheless, to accept that our human mind, of which we are so proud, to accept that our mind is unable to understand this unique phenomenon, that doesn't mean any kind of defeat of our intelligence. It only shows what a profound mystery lies at the heart of reality. A mystery that can never be understood by the intellect. When we rid ourselves of Maya or relativity, like the enlightened souls, we see the universe as pure consciousness, pure being. That is why Shankaracharya describes Maya as the power of the Lord, Paramesha Shakti. It is the mysterious power of Brahman, dwelling in Brahman itself, having no existence independent of Brahman. In fact, Maya is non-different from Brahman. That is what we heard Sri Ramakrishna say. And Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, indeed, this divine Maya of mine, consisting of the Gunas, is hard to overcome. But those who take refuge in me, they alone shall cross over this Maya. It is this Maya that Sri Ramakrishna worshipped as the Divine Mother, the Mother of the universe, who holds in her womb all living beings or everything that exists, who like a mother supports them after creating them, and who at the end of the cycle withdraws them into herself. Sri Ramakrishna also taught that Brahman and Maya are non-different, like fire and its power to burn, like a serpent and its wriggling motion. If you accept the one, you must accept the other. If you see the fire, you have to recognize its power to burn. Sri Ramakrishna wanted his devotees to regard Maya as the Divine Mother. He used to say, bondage and liberation, bandha and moksha are both of her making. By her inscrutable power, people become entangled in the world. And by her grace, they attain liberation. This we saw in the story of Totapuri the other day. So Sri Ramakrishna did not deny or defy Maya. He approached it with reverence, worshipped it. And through its grace, attained to the knowledge of Brahman, the highest knowledge. But this power of the Lord, when it is discussed in philosophy, then this power of the Lord comes to have several different names. Vedanta philosophers have used about half a dozen terms like Maya, Prakriti, Ajnana, Avidya, Avyakta, Avyakrita. And all of them have been used practically synonymously. Of course, each of these terms has its own distinct philosophical connotation, though in actual practice, these distinctions are not always strictly maintained. Generally speaking, Maya means illusion. Prakriti means nature or matter. This we know. This is fairly familiar. Then come avidya and ajnana. Avidya means ignorance in the sense of absence of knowledge. Nescience is the word that is used in English translations. Nescience. Whereas ajnana means false knowledge, wrong knowledge. That is not absence of knowledge. Then we have avyakta and avyakrita. Avyakta means unmanifested, hidden. Avyakrita means undifferentiated. Everything is in one homogeneous potential state. So, Maya is illusion, Prakriti is matter, Avidya is absence of knowledge, Ajnana is wrong knowledge, Avyakta is unmanifested, Avyakrita is undifferentiated. But as I said, the words are often interchanged. The best and the most beautiful definition of Maya we find in Shankaracharya's famous Viveka Chudamani. What is Maya? The Acharya gives a comprehensive, umfassend description. He says, Maya, also known as avidya or avyakta. Maya is the divine power, Shakti of the Lord. Maya is the divine power of the Lord. She is composed of the three Gunas. She has no beginning. She is subtle and imperceptible in her potential state. It is from the effects she produces that her existence is inferred by the wise. It is she who gives birth to the entire universe. She is neither real nor unreal, nor both. So, I'll repeat it once more. Maya is the divine power of the Lord. She is composed of the three Gunas, has no beginning, is subtle and imperceptible in her potential state. It is from the effects that she produces that her existence is inferred by the wise. It is she who gives birth to the entire universe. Then, the second part is, she is neither real nor unreal, nor both. She is neither different from reality, nor non-different from it, nor both. She is neither composed of parts, nor an integral whole, nor both. What does this nor both mean? She is neither real nor unreal nor both. She is neither different from the reality nor non-different from it, nor both. She is neither composed of parts nor an integral whole, nor both. That means she is most strange, Shankaracharya says. She is most strange. Her nature is inexpressible. That is all. So Vedanta describes Maya as the power of Brahman dwelling in Brahman itself and is non-different from it. This is what Sri Ramakrishna also says. Then Maya is beginningless, because we can't assume any beginning in time. Maya is time, space and causality. We can't assume any beginning in time. If we assume such a beginning, then the question presents itself, what was before that beginning? It's a question that can never be conclusively answered. But Maya disappears when we get direct knowledge of Brahman. Then Maya is composed of the three gunas, which are not its qualities, but the very stuff it is constituted of. It is like three strands which together make a rope. And these gunas are present in everything in this phenomenal world, and we are all bound to this world by the rope of Maya. Even God, Saguna Brahman or Ishvara, even he is associated with these gunas. The difference is, unlike us, he is Mayadhisha. He keeps them under control. He keeps his Maya under his control. He wields Maya. With the help of Rajas, Sattva and Tamas, he creates, sustains and dissolves this universe. Only Nirguna Brahman, pure being or pure consciousness, only that is untouched by the gunas. There is another well-known definition of Maya that we come across in that small but important book, Vedanta Sara. Vedanta Sara is a text that is very widely used as an introduction to Advaita Vedanta. There, the author, Sadananda, he also belongs to the Advaita Vedanta tradition. Sadananda defines Maya as something positive though intangible, which cannot be described as either being or non-being, and which is antagonistic, opposed to knowledge. This is Sadananda Yogindra's definition of Maya. Yeah, it overlaps somewhat with the Shankaracharya's also, because he says, though it is intangible, it is also something positive, which cannot be described as either being or non-being, but which is antagonistic to knowledge. Let's try to understand the meaning of these definitions. First of all, Maya cannot be described as either being or non-being. That is why Maya is said to be anirvachaniya, indefinable. If it were being, in the true sense of the word, if it were being, that means if it were real, then we would be able to perceive this tangible universe, which is the effect of Maya, at all times, past, present and future, or waking, dream and deep sleep. But being, what is, can never become non-being. What is cannot become what is not. existence cannot become non-existence. The real can never become unreal. But this universe, though it appears as something positive, is not seen in samadhi. It disappears. Nor is it seen in deep, dreamless sleep, for that matter. On the other hand, if Maya were non-being, a totally non-existent unreality, like the son of a childless woman, to quote the classic example, the son of a barren woman, or as unreal as the horns of a rabbit, then we would never be able to perceive this universe of variety. That would be impossible. We could not see the universe of names and forms as real, as something positive. That is why Maya is said to be something positive. Something positive means Maya and its effect, this universe, have a positive existence. They can't be dismissed as unreal. They are seen to exist as something substantial. From where? From our relative standpoint. Though they are unsubstantial, non-existent from the standpoint of Brahman, the absolute reality. The word positive indicates Maya's capability of producing this visible universe. Aghatana ghatana patiyasi. It also indicates that Maya is not pure negation. It is not a negation of everything. And Maya is said to be opposed to knowledge. Opposed to knowledge in the sense that Maya and its manifestation, that is this material universe, they disappear as darkness is opposed to light. They disappear with the dawn of Brahman knowledge. Brahman and Maya cannot coexist. The absolute and the relative, the one and the many, light and darkness cannot coexist. You don't perceive both of them together at the same time. When one of them is perceived, the other is non-existent. They are not even correlatives. That is to say, the two are totally unrelated to one another, independent of one another, or they are not interdependent. That is why the question as to how the absolute becomes the relative is actually illogical. The question is wrong. As long as one sees Maya or its effects, one may only say that it belongs to Brahman. Because nothing exists ultimately. Ultimately nothing exists except Brahman. So if I see Maya, then I can only say that it resides in Brahman. That is why Vedantists describe Maya as the mysterious power of the Supreme Lord. It is through this mysterious power that the illusion of Srishti, Sthiti and Laya of this universe is produced. That is the illusion. But from the standpoint of Brahman, which is all light and knowledge, where there is no shadow, there is no Maya. When I am identified with Brahman, I don't even see a trace of Maya. From the relative standpoint, Brahman's true nature seems to be obscured, further by a mysterious power that lies within Brahman itself, because where else should it be? And from there it brings into existence this vast panorama of the phenomenal universe. What is a panorama? A panorama is a continuously passing or changing scene, an unfolding of events. And what do we find in this panorama of the phenomenal universe? We see the illusion of time, space, causality, all of which hides pure consciousness and projects the multiple universe. That is what we see. We see the illusion of the ego and non-ego and their mutual relationship. We'll take this up in our next class. The infinite Brahman appears as the individual soul with the ego, mind, senses, and a physical body. Maya, through its names and forms, manifests the multiple objects of this relative world. But what is it that appears as those multiple objects? What is it in reality? In reality, it has to be Brahman itself. Brahman itself, we may say Brahman itself stamped by names and forms. It is all the work of Maya. So finally, what is Maya? Swami Vivekananda summarizes everything beautifully. He says, Maya is not illusion as it is popularly interpreted. Maya is not illusion. Maya is real, yet it is not real. It is real in the sense that the real behind it, that the real is behind it and gives Maya its appearance of reality. Maya is real in the sense that reality is behind it, and that reality gives Maya its appearance of reality. That which is real in Maya is the reality that pervades through Maya. And yet, Swamiji says, the reality is not seen. And hence, that which is seen is unreal, and it has no real, independent existence of itself. It is dependent upon the real for its existence. The reality is not seen, and so that which is seen is unreal. And it has no real or actual independent existence of itself, but it is dependent upon the reality for its existence. So, Swamiji says, Maya is a paradox. Real, yet not real. An illusion, yet not an illusion. One who knows the real, what does he see in Maya? Swamiji says, one who knows the real sees in Maya not illusion. He sees reality itself. And one who does not know the real sees in Maya illusion and thinks that illusion to be real. How beautiful. One who knows the real sees in Maya not illusion but reality. One who knows not the real sees in Maya illusion and thinks it real. That is what Maya is.